Previously on Dominish Books. Today we're going to take a look at some of the series that I'm in the middle of reading. Once we're through with those, I'm going to take a quick look as well at some of the series that I really want to be in the middle of. So ones that I'm really excited to start and that I hope to add to this ongoing list in the coming months. Hey all, my name's Dom, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to my series check-in video. This is part 2 of the series check-in. Part 1 was posted a few days ago and will be linked in the cards above. Go check it out if you haven't already done so. If you have and you're ready for part 2, looking at some of the series that I want to be starting soon, that's coming up next, so I'll hand you back to the other guy. Take it away, Dom. Now I'm going to take a little look at some of the series that I want to be in the middle of, and with this one I didn't mention it at the start of the previous section, but I'm only counting series where there are more than one book available. So I'm going to bookend this list with 2 sci-fi titles. The first of the series that I want to be having a look at and seeing if I get on with them is The Protectorate by Megan O'Keefe. So this one starts off with Velocity Weapon. You've then got Chaos Vector and Catalyst Gate. And I really like the covers of these, but the storyline did intrigue me as well. We're dealing with a fighter pilot essentially who loses consciousness and wakes up 230 years in the future. And she's deserted, she's completely on her own, she just has a kind of a rogue AI as a companion. So I want to find out a bit more about this. It's quite a nice synopsis for me in terms of it gives you a little bit to get your attention, but it doesn't tell you everything that you're going to learn about the story. So there's obviously a lot to pick up in this series, and I'm quite looking forward to starting this. I don't do a lot of sci-fi, and this is definitely one of the ones that I do want to give a try to. So for the rest of them, as I say, bookended by 2 sci-fi series, and for the rest of the books I'm literally just going to go in reverse order of how I opened them when I was looking at these on Goodreads. So the next one is one that I've recently added to my list, and it is pretty much entirely because of Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads. This one is the Iconoclast series by Mike Shell, starting with Aching God. You've then got Sin Eater and Idol's Fall, which was released this year. So I know Andrew absolutely raves about this series, and that's kind of sold me, despite the fact that I know literally nothing about the storyline of this series. So I'm going to read from Goodreads, and it says, the days of adventure are past for Ulrich Manteo. Retired to the countryside, isolated with his scars and riches, he no longer delves into forbidden ruins, seeking dark wisdom and treasure. So it sounds like he's a former dungeon crawler, a bit of a treasure hunter, and he basically has to save his daughter and go back to the place of his greatest trauma, the haunted Barrowlands. Along with a group of inexperienced companions and an old soldier, he must confront the dangers of the ancient and wicked Jiao civilization. He survived fell beasts, insidious traps and deadly hazards before, but how can he contend with the malice of a bloodthirsty living God? So, sounds pretty interesting. There's a lot to get into there, and I'm hoping that I will do that soon and I'll enjoy this series. Next up is, there's 2 books in this series. I think it was originally intended to be a trilogy. I don't know if we are still waiting for book 3 or if it is now just closed as a duology, but this one is the Kreidic Sagas by Alicia Wanstall-Burke. I picked this one up recently. I've been following the author on Instagram for a while, and I've seen this book several times and got interested in it, so I went and picked it up. The story on this one, again, it's one that sounded quite interesting to me. Book 1 is Blood of Heirs and book 2 is Legacy of Ghosts. Synopsis for book 1 is Leiden Tolak is the fiercest of her father's daughters, more than capable of one day leading her clan. But caught between her warring parents, Leiden's world begins to unravel when another of her father's wives falls pregnant. Before she has time to consider the threat of a brother, a bloody swathe is cut through the heart of the clan, and Leiden must fight not only to prove her worth, but simply to survive. So that sounds interesting. There is a second part of the story though. Ranulf Olseta wants nothing more than to be a worthy successor to his father's throne. When his home is threatened by the aggressive Woden Empire, Rand becomes his city's saviour, but powers within him are revealed by the enemy and he's condemned to death. Confused and betrayed, Rand is forced to flee his homeland, vowing to reclaim what was lost even if it kills him. So two quite interesting storylines there, and obviously they're going to converge at some point, I would imagine, as the story goes on. Next up, and it's one of the few of these series that I want to start that I actually have one of the books in physical format, and this one is The Black Coast by Mike Brooks. So this is book one of the God King Chronicles. This one again is one that I've been interested in for a while. Book two, The Splinter King, has just recently been released, so there are two books available at the moment. I'm not sure whether this is an expected trilogy or beyond that, or whether it is just contained within the two books. This one is the start of a series filled with war dragons, armoured knights, seafaring raiders, dangerous magic and battle scenes, so plenty there to get into. When the citizens of Black Keep see ships on the horizon, terror takes them, for they know who is coming. For generations, Black Keep has been raided by the fearsome clanspeople of Ivernia. Saddling their war dragons, the Neridans rush to defend their home, only to discover that the clanspeople have not come to pillage at all. Driven from their own homeland by the rise of a demonic despot who prophesies the end of the world, they've come in search of a new home. Meanwhile, the wider continent of Nerida is lurching towards war. Black Keep is about to be caught in the crossfire of the coming war for the world, if only its new mismatched society can survive. So initial thoughts about this book were around dragons and dragon riders, but my understanding is that is definitely not the case, and it's more to do with these two civilizations coming together and how they start to interact and get along with each other. I have heard that it is a really good book. It's got a flat 4.0 rating on Goodreads from only 421 ratings. So not many people have read it so far and given it a rating on there, compared to obviously some of the series that we hear a lot about, but I do like the sound of this book. It's got a lovely cover, and there's another book to get my teeth into if I do like this one. So next up is the Reborn Empire series by Devin Madsen. This is a 4-book series, I believe, or according to Goodreads, it's 4 books. We've got We Ride the Storm, We Lie with Death, and We Cry for Blood. And then the 4th book, We Dream of Gods, is released at some point next year. Whether it'll continue or whether it's contained within those 4 books, I do not know. This one, though, is another one that I've got the book of, and it's a lovely cover. I really do like this, and the next 2 books that have covers so far continue in this vein with a nice range of different colours, though. We've got a yellow and a blue. I'll show the covers separately in the space here, but I really do like the design of these ones. It's definitely one of the prettiest books that I've got on my shelves, and if I do like it and I get all 3, they're going to look great together as a set. This one, in the midst of a burgeoning war, a warrior, an assassin and a princess chase their own ambitions. War built the Kizian Empire, war will tear it down. 17 years after rebels stormed the streets, factions divide Kizia. Only the firm hand of the God Emperor holds the empire together. But when a shocking betrayal destroys a tense alliance with neighbouring Chiltay, all that has been won comes crashing down. In Kizia, Princess Miko Tsai is a prisoner in her own castle. She dreams of claiming her empire, but the path to power could rip it and her family asunder. In Chiltay, assassin Cassandra Marius is plagued by voices of the dead. Desperate, she attempts a contract that promises to reward her with a cure if she helps an empire fall. And on the border between nations, Captain Ra Itorin and his warriors are exiles forced to fight in a foreign war or die. As an empire dies, 3 warriors will rise. They will have to ride the storm or drown in its blood. So, quite a lot going on there. 3 distinct storylines, which, as is the norm, you'll expect them to come together towards the end of the book, or maybe later on in the series. But I've had my eye on this one for a while. I do quite like the look at it. Again, it's not got a vast number of ratings, a little bit over 1100 for book 1, 3.95. Book 2 is rated at 4.18 and book 3 at 4.27. So although obviously fewer people are rating the later books because they are newer releases, and these are going to be the people who've read the earlier books in the series, the general consensus seems to be that the series does get better as it goes along. Next, we've got a series from one of my favourite authors of the moment, Adrian Tchaikovsky, and this one is The Echoes of the Fall. So books in this series, there are 3 of them, The Tiger and the Wolf, The Bear and the Serpent, and book 3 is The Hyena and the Hawk. This one I don't know a vast amount about, even though I keep hearing about it. I know that it is to do with shape-shifting clans, or clans rather of shapeshifters, and I also learnt recently that it has ties with the Shadows of Yapt, which I won't talk about other than to say I've said plenty of times before it's one of my favourite series. So definitely want to get into this one and see what it's like. Partly because of that linked Shadows of the Apt, and partly because I really enjoy Adrian Tchaikovsky's writing, whether it's fantasy or sci-fi, with Shadows of the Apt, Spiderlight, Children of Time and Children of Ruin. There's plenty other books out there as well that I haven't read, but those ones I have read and I've enjoyed all of them. The story here for book 1, Tiger and the Wolf at least: in the bleak northern crown of the world, war is coming. Money's father is the Wolf clan's chieftain, but she's an outcast. Her mother was queen of the tiger, and these tribes have been enemies for generations. Money also hides a deadly secret. All can shift into their clan's animal form, but Money can take on tiger and wolf shapes. She can't disown half her soul, so she escapes with the killer broken axe in pursuit. Money's father plots to rule the north, and controlling his daughter is crucial to his schemes. However, other tribes also prepare for strife. It's a season for omens, as priests foresee danger, a time of testing and broken laws. Some say a great war is coming, overshadowing even wolf ambitions, but what spark will set the world ablaze? So that doesn't really tell a vast amount, but it is a little bit interesting. I'm definitely more interested in this because of my past experience with Tchaikovsky, and to see what that link is with the insect kingdom of Shadows of the Apt. I'd like to see how they integrate with this story, what part they play, how much of a part it is they play, and also just because it's part of the same world as we saw in Shadows of the Apt, but a completely different part of it that we haven't actually specifically seen in that great 10-book series. Next up in the books that I want to try out and get into the series of is the Chronicles of the Bitch Queen, which starts with book 1, The Wolf of Oronjaro, which is another really pretty cover. This one, you've got books 2 and 3 are also available, the Ikasar Falcon and the Dragon of Jin Sayeng, so there's a full trilogy there on this one, and it does look like that is the finale of the series, the Dragon of Jin Sayeng, so it's a contained 3-book story to get into. The story of book 1, The Wolf of Oronjaro: a queen of a divided land must unite her people even if they hate her, even if it means stopping a ruin that she helped create. I murdered a man and made my husband leave the night before they crowned me, which I think is, I've heard, line 1 of this story. Kind of. So it starts off, they called me the bitch queen, the she-wolf, because I murdered a man and exiled my king the night before they crowned me. So it's paraphrased, but it's about that, and it's quite a good hook for an opening line. Continuing though, born under the crumbling towers of Oronjaro, Queen Talion was the shining jewel and legacy of the bloody War of the Walls that nearly tore her nation apart. Her upcoming marriage to the son of her father's rival heralds peaceful days to come, but his sudden departure before their reign begins fractures the kingdom beyond repair. Years later, Talion receives a message urging her to attend a meeting across the sea. It's meant to be an effort at reconciliation, but an assassination attempt leaves the queen stranded and desperate to survive in a dangerous land. With no idea who she can trust, she's on her own as she struggles to fight her way home. So again, this is the type of synopsis that I quite like. It gives you a hook, but it doesn't tell you everything that you're going to be expecting in the story. We only really hear about one character essentially, who is obviously the key character in the series as a whole, but it definitely intrigues me, and I've heard good things about this series. It's another one that hasn't got the best of ratings, but that does really improve as the books go on. So you got 3.74 from a little bit under 2,000 ratings for book 1. Book 2 from 500 is rated at 4.19, and then from 200, book 3 is rated at 4.48. So can't read too much into that with those sample sizes, and obviously you've got the continuing series bias for readers who are reading beyond book 1 in the series, but that's definitely a good sign that they're heading in the right direction. And also 3.74 by itself is not actually a bad score. It's not actually a bad rating for a book, and especially considering it's only from 2,000 ratings, so there's a lot of people who I'm sure might enjoy this book who haven't got to it yet, and hopefully I'm one of those. Okay, so we're moving on to the last of my physical copies here with The Tide Child by R.J. Barker. So this one starts off with the Bone Ships, and then we've got book 2, The Call of the Bone Ships, and book 3 is The Bone Ships Wake. This one, again, I've heard some good things about, but I've also heard some people saying that they didn't like this book. You're always going to get that imbalance of opinion with any book, so you can't read too much into that. This one though, the overall consensus from around 3,000 ratings is 4.12 for book 1, so that's a pretty good opening. Book 2 is rated at 4.51 and book 3 hasn't yet been published, so I'll ignore the rating that it's got for that one. So the story for this one, for book 1 at least, The Bone Ships, is two nations at war and a prize beyond compare. For generations, the 100 Isles have built their ships from the bones of ancient dragons to fight an endless war. The dragons disappeared, but the battles for supremacy persisted. Now the first dragon in centuries has been spotted in far-off waters, and both sides see a chance to shift the balance of power in their favour, because whoever catches it will win not only glory, but the war. So obviously some quite high stakes in the opening kind of statement for the book, and I'm really looking forward to this one, hoping that I enjoy it. It's got dragons on the cover, which is always a good thing as far as a lot of fantasy fans, myself included, go, and there's dragons actually in the story as well, so that's definitely a plus point. I'm really kind of intrigued to see how they integrate these dragons, and whether it is literally just a case of go and kill it, skin it, and use the bones. Next up is another trilogy where we've got 2 books released and the 3rd book not yet out. This is the 5 Warrior Angels series by Brian Lee Durfee. Another book that I've heard some really good things and also some not so great things, but I definitely want to read this one. I am ignoring the negative reviews that I've heard because they've not swayed my interest in the series basically. So this one starts off with The Forgotten Moon, which is on a 3.91 rating from less than 1,000 ratings. Book 2 is The Blackest Heart, which, although it's only got 337 ratings at the moment, is rated at an average of 4.32, so that's a big improvement. But perhaps what I've heard about book 1 has really put people off book 2, and the people who are reading that one really are the ones who loved book 1 anyway, so you've definitely got the opportunity for that continuing series bias in the ratings as the series goes on. Book 3, The Lonesome Crown, is expected next year, so hopefully I'll get into this series and like it and be able to pick up book 3 when it comes out as well. This one's quite a long synopsis. A massive army on the brink of conquest looms large in a world where prophecies are lies, magic is believed in but never seen, and hope is where you least expect it. Welcome to the Five Isles, where war has come in the name of the invading army of Sor Sevier, a merciless host driven by the prophetic fervour of the angel prince Eros, towards the last unconquered kingdom of Golconda. Yet Galt, one of the elite knights archaic of Sor Sevier, is growing disillusioned by the crusade he's at the vanguard of just as it embarks on his lord Eros's greatest triumph. And that's a bit of a mouthful with all those names and unknown words in there. You don't generally tend to get quite so much of that in a synopsis, so that's a little bit jarring to start off with. While the eldest son of the fallen king of Golconda now reigns in ever-increasing paranoid isolationism, his 2 sisters seek their own paths. Jondrelin, the older sister, renowned for her beauty, only desires to prove her worth as a warrior, while Tala, the youngest sister, has uncovered a secret that may not only destroy her family, but the entire kingdom. Then there's Hawkwood, the assassin sent to kill Jondrelin, who has instead fallen in love with her, of course, and trains her in his deadly art, also of course. All are led further into dangerous conspiracies within the court. And hidden at the edge of Golconda is Nail, the orphan taken by the enigmatic Shawcroft to the remote whaling village of Gallows Haven, a young man who may hold the link to the salvation of the entire Five Isles. You may think you know this story, but everyone is not who they seem, nor do they fit the roles you expect. So, bit of a mouthful there for the whole thing, let alone that first sentence. Not a synopsis that I actually like. That's actually the first time that I've read that, if I'm honest with you. But this is definitely one that I've picked up on the strength of the cover and on what some people have said about it. And that's a good thing as far as I'm concerned, because quite frankly, that's not the greatest of book synopses that I've ever read. Okay, so from the long synopsis to the short, the next series, penultimate series on this list, is The Band by Nicholas Eames, starting off with Kings of the World, and then we've got The Bloody Rose with Outlaw Empire to come. It's not got an expected publication date yet, so I don't know whether that's going to be out next year or beyond that. We shall see. The synopsis for Kings of the Wild, though: Clay Cooper and his band were once one of the best, the meanest, dirtiest, most feared crew of mercenaries this side of the Heartwild. Their glory days long past, the mercs have grown apart and grown old, fat, drunk, or a combination of the three. Then an ex-bandmate turns up at Clay's door with a plea for help. His daughter Rose is trapped in a city besieged by an enemy 100,000 strong and hungry for blood. Rescuing Rose is the kind of mission that only the very brave or the very stupid would sign up for. It's time to get the band back together for one last tour across the wild. So that is how you write a synopsis, compared to the previous one for The Forgetting Moon, which was a good example for me of how not to write a synopsis. This one, again, I've heard so much more about from word of mouth than I have from actually reading the synopsis myself. Again, it's the first time that I've actually fully read the synopsis for this book, but it's not swayed me. It's definitely just made me think, yeah, that's exactly what I've been led to expect. And I am looking forward to this one, even though there are some things with the kind of the rock music tie-ins that have potentially been putting me off a little bit, and that's maybe why I've not got to this one just yet. But it's got a good sample size of 32,000 rating and an average of 4.3, so that's pretty good going. And book 2's just below that, 4.22 from just over 12,500 ratings. So two good sets of ratings for these books, and I'm looking forward to getting into these ones. Okay, so the last one, I said that I was going to bookend it with sci-fi, and this one is the most recent addition to my Want to Read series. This is the Takes Kalan series by Arkady Martin, and this one is really going to test my first time seeing a word and pronouncing it. So here we go. Book 1 is A Memory Called Empire, which is rated from just under 30,000 ratings at an average of 4.15, and then book 2, which came out this year, is A Desolation Called Peace, which is higher rated from 8,000, so it's already got a good sample size, giving it an average of 4.41. So these are looking quite good. This one, I will be honest, I've put on my list pretty much on the strength of recommendation from Adrian at All Booked Up, who's called this his favourite sci-fi series of all time, or certainly one of them. So I'm looking forward to giving this one a try. Let's go see what the storyline is. Ambassador Mahit Desmair arrives at the centre of a multi-system Takes Kalani empire, only to discover that her predecessor, the previous ambassador, that's what predecessor means, from their small but fiercely independent mining station has died. Station with a capital S, wonder if that's important. No one will admit that his death wasn't an accident, or that Mahit might be the next to die during a time of political instability in the highest echelons of the imperial court. Now Mahit must discover who is behind the murder, rescue herself and save her station, still got a capital S, so must be, from Takes Kalan's unceasing expansion, all the while navigating an alien culture that is all too seductive, engaging in intrigues of her own, and hiding a deadly technological secret, one that might spell the end of her station and her way of life, or rescue it from annihilation. So, not as bad as I was expecting, I think, given the name of the series and basically the first name that was introduced in that synopsis. Sounds interesting, doesn't tell me a vast amount on there, but I'm quite interested to see where that goes, and I do want to do a bit more sci-fi. I'm not going to set myself any targets and say that I need to read sci-fi, because like with any fantasy read for me, it's purely down to whether I like the sound of a series, and then beyond that, whether it's fantasy or sci-fi is kind of irrelevant. I will read it if I really like the sound of it. This one is intriguing to me. As I say, it doesn't tell me a vast amount, but I'll give it a go and see how I get on with it. So, what I want from you is to like this video if you've got this far and you appreciate what you've seen. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. Drop me some notes in the comments down below. What do you think of the new series that I want to try? What do you recommend? Where should I start with? What should I prioritise? So that's it for today anyway. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me on this journey through fantasy and sci-fi series. I'll look out for you in another video soon, but until then, take care of yourselves, read some good books, and I'll see you later.